titled Deep Dive in Safety and How to Embrace Emerging Technologies in Network Operations. This is a follow-up webinar to our ITS Congress client event. Let me share some housekeeping items before we kick off the session. You can, there will be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so please log all your questions in the chat box in your go-to control panel. And we will be happy to address them. We already received a couple of questions during the registration process, and we will address them as well. So without further ado, I'm happy to give the floor to Oli Thiel, who will kick off the presentation with our global team, the presentation of our global team. Thank you, Oli.
Thank you, and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. So I'm Oli Thiel. I'm WSP's Global Digital Lead for Intelligent Mobility. And I have the privilege of working with our global network of experts in intelligent transport and mobility, some of who you can see on the screen now. At WSP, we employ over 70,000 professionals across the world, of which around a third work within transport and infrastructure. And you can see here some of our intelligent transport leads across our regions. At WSP, we pride ourselves on thinking globally but acting locally, and our team's depth and breadth gives us the scale to be able to do this. So our experts make use of our global professional network to support local delivery and bring in innovation and best practice from around the world. So if you're from one of the regions on the page and if you want to speak to one of our team, please do reach out. And I'd now like to pass over to our other presenter, our ITS lead for the US business, Virginia Lingham. Virginia, over to you.
Great, thanks, Oli. Next slide. I'm happy to be here today to share with you. As Karina mentioned, this presentation is a follow-up to a presentation that was made at our client breakfast at the 2025 ITS World Congress in Atlanta. It was a great event and really an amazing event, great opportunity to connect with clients as well as bring our teams together from across the globe. Also, the two presentations today are part of a series of thought pieces and publications that this group, the Global Network for ITS, puts out each year. In the past, we've done papers like New Mobility Now, and New Mobility Next. So this is part of a series of papers that we do to really push the envelope and see what the current topics are and what the current needs are for our clients and the industry. Next slide. So I'm going to be sharing today a paper that we worked on that was led by the US with much input from other global regions as well. So the World Congress, ITS World Congress, was a great reminder that our industry isn't just about projects and policies. It's about people coming together to share ideas, challenges, assumptions, and something better. And this morning, I want to focus on something that matters deeply, which is safety. Next slide, please. Last summer, Ian Patey, who is our ITS global lead, he emailed me an article from The Economist that said, what to do about America's killer cars. And that really sparked a conversation. We quickly decided to focus on this year's thought piece on this topic. The stark reality is every year, lives are lost forever, altered on US roads. Families, communities, futures, all changed in an instant. Next slide. But here's the truth, that serious injuries are not inevitable, they're preventable. And this is discussed in detail in the paper. Well, we have the evidence, we have the strategies. The challenge isn't about knowing what to do, it's about how fast and how effectively we can do it together. This paper includes a small call to action, and we are looking at US road safety through the lens of Vision Zero and the safe systems approach here. It makes one thing very clear: advancing safety will require strong collaboration. Next slide. And as technology becomes more sophisticated and more applicable, we have to widen the circle and deepen the engagement. That's how we accelerate progress towards zero fatalities and serious injuries. So what does that mean in practice? Well, it kind of digs into the topics that we see here, which are explained more in the paper. First, we need to recognize the problem. Let's face the hard truths about scale and nature of what's going on. Second, we need to embrace the safe system thinking. Design for prevention, not blame. Put human vulnerability at the center of the conversation. Third, we need to leverage technology, connected and automated vehicles, digital infrastructure, intelligent transportation systems, data, tools. They aren't just side projects anymore. They're really central to safety. And we don't want to just introduce technology for technology's sake, but it is part of the solution. And fourth, applying global expertise and best practices. Countries across the world have already shown this works. We can and should learn from them. And when I say system designers, I don't just mean engineers. I mean all of us, planners, policymakers, vehicle manufacturers, technology leaders, software and hardware developers, ITS and data experts, connected and automated vehicle innovators, and digital infrastructure providers. We all have to work together in order to make this happen. Every one of those groups has a responsibility and everyone has a role to play. Next slide. The safe systems approach isn't about one single fix. It's about a system of systems, which is a mindset that says prevention is the goal and collaboration is really the only way that we get there. And we know that this is possible. So around the world, again, the countries have taken this approach, and EU, for example, has made this the foundation of its road safety policy. So if we take a look at the numbers, maybe next slide, we can see that something is going on in the US that's different. And that's really what sparked a lot of interest in this paper. The safe system approach is built on the principles that death and serious injuries are unacceptable. Humans make mistakes. Humans are vulnerable. Redundancy is crucial. Safety must be proactive and responsibility is shared. Next slide. So now we need to focus on solutions. So the solutions are here. These examples, they do show that this model works. So if we take a look at the safe systems approach, we apply these solutions and we carry forward these principles that are on the outside edge of this circle. We do know that it works. Next slide. So within the paper, you'll see a number of examples. So we're pulling from these examples from around the world. We have examples from Europe, like ones in Sweden, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. But then we also pull in our best practices from clients that we're working with in places like Nebraska, Florida, Ohio, and California. So I encourage you to, you'll get a copy of this paper and a link to the paper to download it and really dive into those project examples. And we thank our clients who allowed us to share those project examples in this paper. All right, next slide. All right. In the end of the day, this isn't really just about numbers. Every statistic represents a person. Every fatality is a life cut short. Every serious injury is a family forever changed. But here's the good news, that all of us have the tools, the knowledge, and the strategies to prevent these tragedies. So let's ask, so here's my ask, my call to action for you is let's make the safety the standard, not the exception. Let's move past talk and put proven measures into practice. Let's accelerate action together. Because getting to zero isn't just inspirational, it actually is achievable. If we can commit to do it, really commit, we can get there. So we can imagine this future with Vision Zero. Can you? And we really encourage you to please join us on this journey to reach that goal. All right, with that, I'll hand it over. So here's the QR code. If you'd like to download it now, you'll get a follow-up email to be able to access this paper as well as the other papers that we're pushing out this year. So thank you for your time today. I'd be happy to answer any questions after our next presentation. Over to you, Ollie.
Thanks, Virginia. And yeah, I'll go swiftly on to the second paper that we're talking about today, which is around transforming mobility. So this is all about enabling road authorities to harness emerging technologies to deliver safer, greener, and more efficient mobility. So I'll provide an overview similar to what Virginia has just done of some of the key messages in the paper, and then point you to where you can find out more with a link to it. So firstly, why is this important? Well, clearly mobility is what enables society to thrive. We all depend on it. Mobility provides access to employment, to education, to social events, to leisure activities. And a lot of this mobility, whether it's by car or by bus or by taxi, automated or non-automated, relies on roads, which means then an incredibly important factor within mobility is the role of road authorities, which we see evolving over time from an organization primarily focused on building and creating a road network some time ago, then to a more maintaining and improving role alongside that build responsibility, and then more recently to an operational role and an expectation that as a road authority, you're providing a service to customers or road users, which is enabled by technology. And as the complexity of our transport networks and the technology itself increases, for example, with new micromobility services, with data platforms, with customer expectations, road authorities are required to meet changing and competing demands. The second key trend that I think we are all aware of is the pace of change of this technology. And this graphic shows some key technological milestones over 50-year periods, going back from the 1800s to the present day. And you can see from a quick glance that the pace of change is increasing rapidly. And I think we can all feel that in our daily lives. The latest obvious example is the explosion of large language models a few years ago, and what is now, I think, peak hype around artificial intelligence, alongside transport automation really hitting the mainstream. So the question that we aim to address within this paper, and also just more generally, is in this rapidly evolving and complex system, how can road authorities capitalize on emerging technologies to deliver outcomes that are beneficial within mobility? And over the next few minutes, I'm going to talk about a few very simple approaches to do this, which may seem obvious on first glance, but it's surprising how often they're not followed and how these sorts of adoptions of technologies end up not realizing the benefits that they were targeting. The first is to start with the outcomes that you're trying to achieve, but be specific about how you plan to then measure those outcomes and recognize the complexity of the system which impacts on them. So most road authorities would probably agree that you want to make your transport network safer, more economically productive, accessible, and greener. But you might put different weightings on each of those outcomes depending on where you are now and the challenges that you currently face. We just talked a little bit about safety in the US, for example, being a high priority. And clarity on those outcomes you're targeting and how they'll be measured is therefore crucial to success. Placing people at the center of what you're trying to do. So we often talk, when we're talking about implementing change, about considering people, processes, and technology. But ultimately, it's the people, be that the road users, your employees, key stakeholders, who determine whether adoption of emerging technology will succeed or fail. So putting them at the center is vital. And one way to do this is to use empathy maps to help understand the needs of different users. So considering what each stakeholder persona thinks, says, does, and feels within their role from their perspectives. And there are many different tools like this which you can use, but the fundamental point is that people and their needs should be central to your thinking when considering any emerging technology adoption. And when we say putting people at the center, we mean at the center of what is a whole system and needs to be considered as just that. When adopting emerging technology, there'll often be impacts on your existing infrastructure and processes, interfaces with legacy technology, data aspects to consider, and there could be environmental and organizational impacts as well. And without taking a whole system perspective, you risk creating unintended consequences, such as overloading your staff with irrelevant data or breaking with established processes, which could put your organization at risk. And we talk in the paper about specific examples of how we've helped clients to take that whole system perspective around technology implementation. Emerging technologies is a very broad term, but generally we're talking here about digital technology which is being adopted now and which has a disruptive impact. And some examples that you can see listed here are things like automation, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing. The approaches we're talking about are applicable regardless of which technology you're focused on. It's about considering how the technology can best work for you, for your customers, and for your organization. When considering technology adoption, we promote what we call a design-led approach, which incorporates some of the aspects I've already touched on. So in particular, staying people-centric and outcome-focused. And again, we talk in the paper about specific examples of where we have done that, which I'll get onto in a second. But a process that we often follow to prompt this approach and thinking is the double diamond, which many of you may have seen in the past, essentially a visual representation of the design and innovation process. So starting with the opportunity or challenge, encouraging first divergent thinking to fully understand that challenge, and then defining it down to a clear problem statement before going on to the second diamond, which is about designing the solution. So first developing ideas which could address that problem statement, and then delivering ultimately a solution which achieves your outcomes, with then feedback loops along the way to test and evaluate that solution and then refine it appropriately. So it's a relatively simple construct, but it makes sure you don't end up with the all too common solution looking for a problem. And I think we can all think of examples where the second diamond has come before the first, and the wasted investment and effort which can result from that. And if this all seems a little bit too theoretical for you, within our full paper, we've highlighted plenty of examples where we've put these practices into action successfully. And I'll touch on just a few now, given the time. So one example in the US, where we've helped run automated bus trials in Texas, demonstrating huge potential efficiency savings within bus depots. And in the UK, in England in particular, where we've helped our client to define a long-term digital road strategy for England's strategic road network, which helped to drive their implementation plans around technology. And with the same client, save thousands of unnecessary night shifts through the application of machine learning to survey lighting assets. All of those rely on a focus on the outcomes you're trying to achieve and being really specific about how you're going to measure those. And I encourage you all to take a look, read over these examples, and reach out to any of us in WSP if you would like to know more. So to summarize, key actions to achieve success when implementing emerging technologies into mobility systems. Start with outcomes. Hopefully I've hammered that one home enough that you'll remember that. Empowering people and putting them at the center. Embracing the complexity and helping others to understand the whole system that you are fundamentally changing. Treating data as a strategic asset. Now, that's not one that I've talked about too much today, but this is fundamental. Data needs investment to realize value, just like any other asset. So there's more on that in the paper and what we mean by that. Investing incrementally and measuring your success, shouting about it to see those early benefits, and assessing progress as you go. So you'd be surprised, or possibly not, depending on your background, about how bad we seem to be as an industry at measuring the benefits of our projects and schemes. So being clear on the outcomes, measuring them, assessing the benefits as you go so you can justify future investment in emerging technologies is really, really important. So that's everything from me. As I say, please do take a look, reach out if you have any questions, and we'll be on now to take any questions for those who are online. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Virginia and Oli, for an insightful presentation. We have a few questions logged in. So let me start with the first one. What type of infrastructure improvements are anticipated with the advancement of AI and intelligent transportation?
Sure. So I can make a start on that one if you like, and then please do add anything else onto that if you like, Virginia. So I think I'm seeing artificial intelligence as a tool to augment human intelligence and knowledge, not as a replacement for that knowledge. So the way I see it, it should be sort of human-centric AI as the focus. And what artificial intelligence is great at is processing vast amounts of data, identifying patterns and trends which humans might not be able to pick up, at least not as quickly. So what I think that could mean for our infrastructure is the ability for us to better understand specific factors which impact things like safety and sustainability, and help us become more proactive at addressing them. So for example, AI could help us to identify risks to traveling public and flag these up to road operators before they become incidents in a more effective way than we currently do. Or it could help decision makers around transport make more informed investment decisions on new infrastructure based on specific priorities and how you might weight those priorities in a way that if you did it without using those tools, it would take you a lot longer and require a lot more effort. That's pretty where my head is at. I don't know if you had any additions, Virginia.
Yeah, I would just add that, I mean, when it comes to AI and intelligent transportation, like you said, Ollie, it's just more data and more processing of information. So with that, we'll be able to get greater insights and be able to make better decisions, which will lead to infrastructure improvements ultimately. When it comes to things like self-driving vehicles, those also use those tools like AI and intelligent transportation systems in order to operate more efficiently. So we are seeing things like they need more reliable pavement surfaces, they need more reliable lane markings, they need to know the latest information when it comes to a work zone or other real-time changes on the roadway. And so hopefully AI and intelligent transportation system improvements in the future can help, or today as well as in the future, can help to inform those systems. And so those are the types of infrastructure improvements that I'm thinking will go hand in hand with the technology advances that we're seeing today.
Yeah, and it's great because another question came in, and actually you addressed it. One of our participants wanted to hear more about examples how AI can help improve road safety. So thank you for that. Let me move to the next question. What role does system thinking play in integrating historic safety data with emerging real-time data sources to support more proactive safety strategies?
I guess I'll start with that.
Okay.
And with the disclaimer is that I'm my focus is not, I'm not a safety engineer, but I do, I have, in developing this paper, I've opened up some doors with our safety group and I've been more in tune with some of the safety efforts that we have going on, which is great. I mean, that's kind of one of the advantages, one of the benefits of working on papers like this together is that we can break down those silos and work more collaboratively across the different divisions within our firm as well as within, the industry. So historical data is going to be important to have that baseline. So we need to understand the existing conditions. We need to understand the baseline of the facility, of the network, of the roadway, of the community that we're working with in order to show the benefits of the proposed system. If you just take a systems engineering perspective, you need to have that historic data, and that helps make the case for the improvements if it is actually valid. So I think the integrating the historic safety data is really important as far as the system approach in order to prove the benefits or validate or even just evaluate the benefits that we're anticipating with proactive safety strategies and other system improvements. Ollie, do you have anything to add there?
No, yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think, as we've said a few times, it's all about the outcomes. And I think what the role that systems thinking can play is helping to prioritize those outcomes without getting carried away with, the shiny technology. And for example, if we're talking about data sources, there are many, many different data sources, vendors of data, be it historic or real time. So if you're in the shoes of a road operator, how do you know which of those data sources you need and which will help you address your challenges? And I think taking a systems thinking approach and considering that whole system helps you to do that, because you start with what are you trying to achieve and then work towards, okay, well, what data do I therefore need to make that happen? It's a much better way of doing it than just delving into the world of data and hoping for the best.
Thank you. Next question. How do we ensure and assure that safe system thinking is being considered and applied at all levels, functions, and roles? How do we embed this mindset and promote this thinking into teams? And is the system thinking core of every project and something that is being championed by someone across WSP and individual teams?
So I think this is a great question, and I don't have necessarily all of the answers, but I think some of the key things that we need to take into consideration and some of the things that are being done are measuring these, measuring the projects, measuring the impact. If we don't measure it, it won't change. So even within our own company, within WSP globally, as well as with clients and across the industry, we need to be measuring how we're breaking the silos and how we're working together. We need to have key measures that we're working on collaboratively in order to see that impact. So I think that's one way that we embed this mindset and promote the thinking into all teams out there. The other thing I wanted to mention is that this has to happen at every level. So we need to create communications tools and programs and incentives and different outreach methods to reach everybody, to reach senior leadership, to get them on board with understanding the importance of the safe systems thinking, to understand what that means. We need to work with mid-level managers so that they can be measuring this and incorporating it into their projects. We need to be working with junior staff, and so it's really core to how their career progresses and the things that they're really passionate and interested in. So I think we have some work to do there, both again within WSP, with our project work and with our clients and across the industry. So those are my two responses to that question, and two things that are very actionable things that we can do and we can work on every day.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think, as you said, it needs to be part of the outcomes that we're measuring and that we're assessing. And if safety is a priority, which we know it is, and it needs to remain one, it needs to be measured and assessed. I think the only thing I'd add, just as a kind of a thought from me, really, is I think we need to be comfortable being uncomfortable when we're talking about some of these topics, because nobody likes to talk about, for example, safety going in the wrong direction, and we need to be honest with ourselves if that is the case. Why is that the case? And it's not enough to just focus on one aspect of that. That's the whole element of the safe system approach. If we just focus, for example, on making our infrastructure safer, while that is a great thing to do, if we're not thinking about, well, actually, how do we think about improving behaviors around safety? How do we think about improving the safety of pedestrians and vulnerable road users or cyclists, etc.? Then we're not looking at the whole picture, and therefore we might not actually impact the overall figure that we're trying to improve, which is impact on road fatalities and injuries.
Thank you. We'll take two more questions and before we wrap up the webinar. So the next one is, in your opinion, is systems engineering or thinking an underappreciated discipline or skill set, particularly thinking about the development and delivery of portfolio, programs, and projects?
I think I can give that a stab. I think systems thinking, in a way, suffers from the fact that it's applicable almost everywhere, and therefore not fully understood by everybody because it's almost too broad in some cases. So I think sometimes we need to break it down and just keep it really simple, which is why we try to break it down into, okay, what do we actually mean by a whole system approach? What we mean is, starting with the outcomes, putting people at the center, considering all the aspects. So systems thinking and then systems engineering as kind of part of that, I think is you could maybe say it was underappreciated and misunderstood in some cases.
I'll say in my current project work that we're doing to advance connected vehicles and V2X solutions, the systems engineering work that we're doing is absolutely critical. So on those projects, I feel like it is appreciated that we have systems engineers and that documentation and that work is being done. So when you have emerging technologies and really working towards implementation and deployment, it just becomes so critical to have that systems approach and to be able to deliver really thoughtful, creative, meaningful systems engineering documentation. So that is just one thing I wanted to mention. So it's really critical for certain projects, and I feel like it's most appreciated in those types of projects where it is most critical, but it's needed all over the place. It's definitely needed all over the place to ensure interoperability, to ensure that the technology investments that are being made are meaningful and will be lasting. But there's also other ways of thinking. So we need diversity in thinking. One of the things that I heard at ITS World Congress was somebody who is a systems thinker like me. She was telling a story on a panel about how she got feedback from her employer that not everybody is a systems thinker. So we have to be able to communicate with others who are not systems thinkers, and we also need their technical expertise, their depth in their expertise. We need their creativity for communications. We need to have like diverse teams, and so systems engineering is a part of that. And yes, we need more systems of systems thinking, but it's just one way of thinking. Not everybody is going to think that way, and we don't want everybody to think that way. We need the diversity of opinions and skill sets to be all on our team. So I don't know, I hope that answers the question, kind of puts things in perspective a little bit too.
Thank you. Next question. Is crowdsourced data becoming more relevant for real-time ATMS operations?
Do you want to try and take that one, Virginia, or should I give it a stab?
I know you've been working on some of the future of ATMS initiatives. Do you want to take it?
Yeah, I can give it a go. So I think is crowdsourced data becoming more relevant? Yes, I think is a short answer. I think all sorts of data is becoming more relevant for ATMS operations, advanced traffic management for those who don't like acronyms. It comes back to what I alluded to earlier, I think, in that there are many different vendors of data out there with different packages, and how they package it is important. I think it comes out, and I first of all put my hand up and say I'm not a data expert in that sense, but from a lot of the conversations I've been having with both those who are involved in operations and those who sell these sort of data things, is the importance of some of the real specifics around it. What is that data telling you? And how can you therefore use it in operations is really important. So yes, crowdsourced data is becoming important, but you can get that from multiple sources, and depending on where you get it from and the granularity of it and the coverage you've got, makes it more or less useful for the application that you're doing. And whether that needs to be, say, real time, like the question is asking, or you can actually get away with using historic or near real time data is another factor. So there's a lot of things that come into it, but short answer would be yes from me.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's becoming more relevant because the data is becoming more reliable and more robust. It used to be just one or two providers that were able to provide the crowdsourced data, but now it's multiple, and there's a lot more vehicles thanks to advanced telematics getting information from the cars directly. So we are seeing examples of that being woven into ATMS, advanced traffic management center operations, more and more. So let's say yes.
Thank you. So we just received a last question. So if okay with you, let's address it before we wrap up. So when looking at safe systems, it can be the case that making one part less safe can lead to making the whole safer. How does WSP make these hard decisions?
I'm just reading through the rest of that question on the example that they've given about faster transit vehicles can lead to fewer car trips and car crashes by attracting more people to transit. So I think they're talking about like modal shift, for example. I think that's a really tricky one, and I think it comes down to the specifics of what you're obviously talking about, but part of what we try to do with our clients is help them to see some of those connections, and I think it's very rare that we have a fully joined up multimodal view of something like that to be able to say, like, we're going to make this change over here, which is going to make this mode less attractive, and therefore this other one more attractive, which is safer. So the question is, how does WSP make these hard decisions? I think we just apply our engineering expertise to it and do the best we can in collaboration with our clients is probably my honest answer to that. I don't know if, Virginia, you have a better one.
No, I think that we're, responsive to the communities that we're working with. It may vary. The priorities of a community may vary by a little bit by the approach. So one community might have different needs. So we'll work with our clients to refine that And so again, I think it just goes back to what you're measuring and what your goals and priorities are. So meeting those objectives and making sure that the objectives are in line with what the community and our clients want. So it may vary, and I agree. Sometimes you can, you know, have like one area maybe a little bit lower in order to have an overall gain. So communicating that with, you know, all levels of leadership or all levels of folks that are involved is really important to make those tough decisions. So I would just say we work with our clients closely to be able to, you know, help them make those decisions, and then we can support them with whatever they need.
Thank you very much, Virginia and Oli, for an excellent session. I'm going to wrap up our webinar now, and I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.